So in terms of personal reflections, I work with a lot of public sector procurers, whether it's in local authorities, whether it's actually as part of universities. I developed the first ever social value and sustainability training for procurement professionals almost 20 years ago. And so I've seen this develop. So in terms of some personal reflections, where are things now? And I believe you need to be aware of these because I think it'll help. And the first thing is to say that procurement professionals are still learning how to identify and embed social value considerations. Over the years, there was a bit of pushback because it's just about value for money, and our value for money definition is the cheapest price. But that's changing. But the reality is, across even in a sector like the higher education sector, or across blue light services and the fire and the police, the reality is that the professionals are still learning how to do this. And that's a challenge for us, but also an opportunity, because if we take responsibility for understanding this agenda and can clearly communicate in it, we can actually help with this. So they're still learning and building in confidence. Some of the early social value considerations I've seen have been focused on easy wins. And what I mean by easy wins is they've started on things they can just count. So you might have been asked, like, how many apprentices are you going to provide as part of this contract? Community hours in terms of contribution, looking at how you support local charities. And they've been asking these questions because they're the easy things to count, because they can do a calculation and say, actually, an apprentice is worth this much, therefore the social value contribution is worth X. And that's okay, but not everyone employs apprentices. I don't employ apprentices, but I work with over 100 public sector bodies. So some of those easy wins, perceived easy wins, I don't think have helped the agenda, because what we really need to be doing is looking at the core contribution of businesses and how that translates. But you will see and be asked these things as well. And taking that one step further, some procurement teams, often driven by political factors in certain public sector organisations, are starting to look at what is the contribution in our geographic boundary within our community. And that's an interesting one, because I don't believe social value is just limited to within a 50-mile radius of a head office. The social value contribution needs to be broader than that. And I'm uncomfortable with the geographic boundary solution, but I have to be honest, you might start getting asked, what are you doing for our communities? And the beauty of thinking about your social value contribution from the beginning, especially if you're a services organisation which is delivering knowledge and part of knowledge transfer, that we are in a situation now by doing knowledge transfer opportunities to a geographical community online is a way to do it. So we're limiting our travel and resource. So it's looking at how we do that. It is a challenge, and I haven't certainly got the answer to that. But what I am doing is pushing back at the public sector in terms of, it's not just about within 50 miles. It's not just within that local authority boundary. Social value is something bigger than that, especially if we're starting to look down supply chains and looking back at raw materials and the social value and risk management there. But you need to be aware of it. The other sort of emerging issues that I've seen really ramp up in importance recently are certainly equality, diversity, and inclusion. The opportunities to stimulate the local economy, providing opportunities for disadvantaged groups, as well as having your own EDI elements in place as an organisation, which is part of your social value response. This is certainly picking up in certain public sector areas. And I think stimulated by many of the inequalities that have come out from COVID and the challenges facing many businesses, many of the issues around social justice that have come out is creating a bit of a perfect storm for this concept of EDI and inclusion and inclusivity to be top of the public sector agenda. And it's just you need to be aware of that in terms of how you respond. But the big one, and I'll make no bones about this, the big one is around climate emergency and carbon efficiency. I get emails virtually every day from different public sector clients talking about how are we going to embed carbon efficiency and deliver against a climate emergency via our supply chains. So whether you're delivering goods or services the delivering those in a carbon efficient way is going to be more and more important. You will start to be asked about your own carbon management plan. You might be asked whether you've developed a carbon footprint. So understanding that, the reality is that is going to ramp up on the agenda. So going back to the environmental, social, economic, there's been a socio-economic focus in the early days of social value since 2012. But what I believe is going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 years, and we can already see the signs, is that the climate emergency and the carbon efficient delivery of products and services is going to be high on the agenda. So once again, as a business, we've got two choices. We ignore it for as long as possible, or what we do is we go, right, how are we going to respond to this? And can we actually get a plan in place to respond? So those are some personal reflections of where things are. And just moving on from that, I just want to say where this has all come from and why I'm doing this today, which is around the Go for Growth programme. Go for Growth programme was set up to help small businesses actually develop their tender skills to win more businesses with the public sector. It's a totally free programme. No supplier will ever pay for any support they get from the Go for Growth programme. We get some funding from the public sector, and that's building to help as many businesses as we can. And if you go to the Go for Growth action planning tool, which is a free resource and a confidential resource, the data is not shared with anyone. What you can actually do is create your own action plan to increase your skills and confidence around tendering, but also within that there's further guidance and materials around social value, sample policies, sample plans, a link to a system where you can help develop your own social value action plan. So that's where this has all come from. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, there's a web address, so you can go on, actually create your own account and start to think about how do I actually improve my tendering skills to the public sector, but also how do I weave social value in that. And we wanted to do a specific thing on social value because it is increasing on the agenda. So I hope you enjoyed that session and the presentation. As I said, I'm Jimmy Brannigan. You've got both emails there. I work with the Go for Growth programme, but obviously with Net Positive Futures. And if there's any questions or comments, then I'm going to open the chat and we'd be happy to respond. So many thanks for that, and I hope you found it useful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the share, and then I can see the chat.